The Stack, a podcast for IT and MSP professionals, with your host, David Papp.
Welcome to the MSP Stack Podcast. I'm David Papp. Tyson is the Executive VP with Broadview Networks in Winnipeg, and he joins us today. Let's talk about vCIO, and you've got information to share regarding tools and delivery. Welcome, Tyson.
Hi, David. Thanks very much for having me on the show. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So let's start up way at the beginning. Explain vCIO. What does that mean to you?
So, it's probably a bit of an overused term in the industry, but what vCIO means is someone who's having a regular strategic technology discussion with the customers. Depending on the size and type of customer we have, we're doing it on either a quarterly or a semi-annual basis, but doing it on a regular, consistent, scheduled time frame that the customer is, prepared and expecting it to happen. And what that is to us is it's reviewing the technology stack the customer has and any challenges that we see within that stack based on age, date, configuration, complexity, and then really what I want to hear from them is their business needs and how IT is working for their organization, where they're seeing challenges, where things are working well, where things aren't working well, and folding that into a short and long-term strategic technology.
Excellent. So you described that you kind of mentioned you've got some tools and some kind of delivery that you used to do that for your clients. Do you want to kind of elaborate on the tool side?
Yeah, so originally we were using an Excel spreadsheet and, we were, documenting what people had from a configuration standpoint. We use IT Glue for our detailed documentation being fed by our PSA tools and some of the other tools that we use. But this was more of a higher level documentation, more at the end customer level. So we were describing what their overall server environment and age is, describing their overall security play, where they're at, what their security posture is, how their end user computing was aligned to best standards for, operating system versions and that type of information. But it all had to be gathered manually by me as a preparation for those meetings in that Excel spreadsheet, and then I basically copy that spreadsheet and do it over again. So we went out into the industry and looked at a number of different tools, and we actually settled on vCIO Toolbox. And what we really liked about vCIO Toolbox is it has both a engineering component and then the vCIO component. So my engineers go and do a number of different functions with the customers on a regular basis that feeds a lot of the technical data into the core of vCIO Toolbox. And then I'm able to review that information and from that make recommendations to our customers. So when we implemented this tool, we implemented and retooled a couple of the existing processes we had in place for how we work with our customers on a regular basis. So we took a regular preventative maintenance function and we took our regular managed services report review with our customers and we baked that into the same tool. So on a quarterly basis, we do a preventative maintenance of the environment. That's how the tech feeds the technical information into the vCIO Toolbox. We have the regular report review meetings we do with our customers on a quarterly basis. And then the information from that gets fed into that tool. And then I'm able to see all of the results, about 150 different questions of reviewing the state of the environment. And basically, we're almost semi-reassessing the customer's environment on a quarterly basis. And then I take that information, or a semi-annual basis, I take that information and I surface to the customer the recommendations based on what the engineers have filled in. We also provide them the detailed report of how the engineers have populated the data about how their environment is configured. But then, as I mentioned, I create high-level recommendations out of that. And then that actually feeds into our PSA as opportunities for the account managers to follow up on.
That's great. Out of curiosity, which PSA have you settled on?
We're on ConnectWise Manage.
Yeah, one of the top three, I would say.
Yeah, we went Yeah, we went to manage in 2013 from an in-house CRM, and we haven't looked back since. We've been on the managed platform and the majority of the ConnectWise platform for most of our tools ever since.
Excellent. So what else can you tell me about this, like for organizations that haven't explored this yet or don't have this service from their MSP, or, is this, what more can you say?
Well, I guess the best part of this, it really is the only way we've found to keep the ideas coming out of the technical services team, the ideas and the needs coming out of, where customers are lacking, whether it be, a server warranty is coming due for renewal, but that hardware is reaching end of life, so it can't be renewed, whether their VMware or Hyper-V are coming out of date, whether their security posture is as good as it should be. We have like 15 common cybersecurity questions we ask and score them on. We talk about their communications and telephony environment. So it really covers the whole gamut of what the customer has in their environment for what their users are using, and allows for, again, the technical team to feed that data in, be reviewed by someone like me who has, that bend of technical knowledge, but also business knowledge and experience, and then present that to the customer in a way the customer can understand it, explain to them the reasons for why we're making this recommendation, timeline it, roadmap it, give cost to it, and then when they get that report back, it has that roadmap built out over the next 1 to 5 years of what their ongoing costs are going to be, or one-time costs are going to be for any new initiatives. And then during those meetings, they give me information about what's going on in the business. They're moving, they're adding more staff, they're making a change to a business unit, they're bringing on a new application, they want to look at bringing on a new application, or obviously we'll be talking to a lot of customers about lately is migrating services to the cloud. So we'll put recommendations in there that aren't specific items that flow back to sales directly to follow up, but just as a discussion point on an ongoing basis for future meetings to help build a cloud strategy for that customer and understand which applications can go to the cloud, what data can go to the cloud, and what needs to stay on premise based on the end user experience they want to have. So it really becomes one single source of truth for what the plan is for that customer. And then the technical team can refer back to it, the account management team can refer back to it, and we're all on the same pace and the same path as to what we're recommending for the customers and why.
You're listening to The Stack.
Special thanks to Pax8 for their support of The Stack. Pax8 empowers the modern MSP to buy, sell, and manage cloud products with automated provisioning, simplified billing, and free PSA integrations to more than 50 verified and vetted cloud service providers. Pax8 is ready to help you simplify your cloud business.
What's in your stack?
What kind of frequency would you recommend to others that have worked for you? Like if you had the ability to change it, what do you recommend, or does it depend on the size of client or their needs?
Yeah, well, we have changed it. So, I mean, we categorize our customers into fully managed and basically non-fully managed. So our fully managed customers are on a quarterly basis. Then our non-fully managed customers are on a semi-annual basis. And really, we tie that to the amount of spend that customer has on a recurring basis, how much it can feed into the pool that pays for this for the engineers and myself to deliver.
That's great. Are there any other tools that you found to be very helpful?
I mean, I leverage a number of our other tools. So I leverage IT Glue during those conversations. One of the great things about COVID, for all the downsides to it, it's made people very open to having these meetings over Teams or over Zoom, which is great because then I can share my screen and really show them a lot of information while we're doing these meetings. So we leverage IT Glue heavily. I'll leverage ConnectWise Command in those meetings. We built the Power BI report for failed standards for workstations and servers. So that helps us you got these workstations that are coming out of date, these ones that need to get updated. Those types of conversations happen dynamically during those meetings as well. And then that goes into the roadmap.
That's fantastic. So talk about on the help desk side, how have things been for you guys? Technically is one thing, but I'm noticing that a lot of organizations are struggling on the help desk, the initial call, the initial ticket, the initial, request for help, whether it's proactive or reactive.
So we did a really hard focus on that pre-COVID and really bolstered our help desk. And we actually, from a best practice model in some ways, we purposely overstaffed our help desk a little bit, and we separated the help desk team from the implementation team a little bit further. And we were actually very impressed throughout the, exceedingly large amount of calls that came in as COVID came into effect. We were actually able to hit the best results numbers we've ever hit with both response times, customer satisfaction times, all of those items. We probably were doing the best we've ever done, starting with COVID, and it's just continued on through to the point now where we have multiple customers we've brought on primarily for help desk services.
That's fantastic. I mean, you touched on a great point there. It's the whole COVID hit, and this big giant technology reset button got placed on the whole industry, and people had to catch up and deal with it and work from home and remote users. And I think from an MSP standpoint, it really allowed that industry to flourish. And if anything, we didn't have enough resources to satisfy it when it came to the hardware and the labor side.
Yeah, hardware has definitely been a challenge. We kind of lucked out on the labor side because we were ahead of the game with the labor that we had. So we were in a good place there. We were also in a good place. We had been moving the majority of our customers to a work from anywhere strategy anyways, an extension of Microsoft 365, the anywhere, anytime, any device. We've really been reinforcing that with our customer base for the last few years, trying to move as many services to the cloud as we can. And if a service can't be moved to the cloud, making sure that we have a good remote access strategy and secure remote access strategy to that on-premise environment. So we had a lot of customers that were in a very good state when COVID hit.
Oh, that's good for you. That sounds like you had great timing.
Yeah, some of it was luck. I'm not saying every customer was in the best case scenario, but the majority of our customers were in a good place. And so it was a pretty easy strategy. The majority of our work was getting some of the users that hadn't been doing much work from home just enabled with the technology that was already there and up to speed with it, because they just hadn't really done it much yet. So, not all the users had been taking advantage of what was already there for the organization.
That's right. Yes. Case in point, we noticed with a lot of people, the great migration to 365 if they haven't done it yet, and using Teams, right?
Yeah, and again, we had probably moved 80% of our recurring revenue customer base to Microsoft 365 already.
Right.
So again, we were in a good state there. Where there has been some scramble since, but in those cases where they wanted to scramble, we kind of slowed them down and said, okay, let's develop a remote strategy for what you have, and then let's talk about how we're going to make that work in the future. Because if we rush into it now, it's just going to be a bad experience. You'll hear me talk about the end user experience all the time. It is the primary driver for me in conversations with customers about how, why, and what we do when change happens, because too many times I've seen the end user experience not be enough of a part of the conversation at the beginning, and then a minor or major change to the environment has a very poor review on the people that made that decision because they didn't understand or take into account what the end user experience was going to be.
Excellent. I love it. I like to wrap up you have tons of knowledge that you've shared here, but I always like to wrap up the show with what I call a single piece of advice, a single power tip. And I'm curious, what would that be from your perspective if you had a single thing that you wanted somebody to walk away with after, let's say they didn't even pay attention to anything you were saying?
Have someone who's technical that can talk to customers, doing it on a regular basis, to understand what they want. You need that salesy tech to be talking to your customers on a regular basis. It's critical to your short-term and long-term growth.
Fantastic. That's solid advice. Well, thanks again, Tyson, for joining the show. We really appreciated the information.
No problem. Thanks very much.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the MSP Stack Podcast. Remember, if you liked it, hit thumbs up. If you didn't like it, hit thumbs down twice. If you'd like to be on the show, head on over to the MSPstack.com and click on the Be a Guest button. The Stack is made possible through the generous support of MSP Corp. What's in your stack?